Hey, welcome back to Nocturne Library, or welcome in if you're new here. I'm Oliver Marsh, and thank you for making this little corner of your night part of the way you wind down and fall asleep. If your mind's been busy today, you're in the right place. Tonight's sleep story, written by Nora Fielding, takes us aboard a rainy night train through the Canadian Rocky Mountains, where polished wood glows softly under lamplight. A steward moves quietly down the corridor with folded blankets and warm tea, and your private compartment waits with crisp sheets, cool glass, and the steady hush of weather against the window. We'll pass through dining cars with low conversation and silver catching the light, lounge spaces softened by velvet and brass, narrow passageways that sway almost imperceptibly beneath your feet, and sleeping quarters prepared with such calm care that even the smallest details begin to loosen the day from your shoulders. The turned-down bed, the faint scent of linen, the muted clink of porcelain, and rain threading down the dark pane beside the mountains. And if you'd like the story tonight, a quiet like or subscribe really does help the channel keep going. So take one slow breath, let your body settle, and let's begin. Chapter 1. Arriving in the sleeper car at dusk in the Canadian Rockies. The brass hook gives a small, bright click as your wool coat is lifted from your arm, and at the same moment the floor beneath your shoes inclines almost imperceptibly into the train's first mounting curve. Your shoulders drop before you mean them to. Warm air touched with cedar polish and steam heat meets the cold still clinging to your sleeves, and you feel yourself arrive. Ahead, the runner carpet narrows the corridor into a straight, sheltered line. Ahead, the corridor runs straight toward the rest of the train. The attendant has arrived almost before you notice him, marked first by polished shoes planted steadily on the carpet while the carriage leans, then by the practiced way he takes the coat's weight without tugging. He hangs it on the brass hook with one hand at the collar and one at the hem, smoothing the wool flat so it will dry evenly if any snow has melted into it. The hook swings once and settles. Your scarf follows, looped neatly beneath. Nothing is announced. The work is done. When you turn fully into the corridor, you feel the train under you more clearly. Not a jolt, not even a sway that asks to be corrected, only a long side-to-side sway through the soles of your feet as the train follows the curve. The runner carpet gives slightly under each step. Along the wall, the brass hooks catch the low light in brief, dull flashes, then dim again as the car moves. Outside the windows at the corridor's far end, evening has already thickened. Snow is falling somewhere beyond the glass, though what reaches you is less the sight of flakes than their effect on the world. Edges reduced, distances shortened, the mountains becoming shapes of slate and pearl beyond a wash of moisture on the panes. Against the carriage, the weather makes a brushed sound, almost like rain laid thinly over metal. You stand for a moment in that threshold feeling, the last trace of outside cold leaving your hands, the sleeper's warmth taking its place. Steam heat rises with a dry, even breath from beneath the windows. The paneling smells faintly of cedar polish, not sharp but rubbed into the grain over many seasons until it has become part of the car's own scent. Under it comes a fainter note you notice only after a second breath. Black tea somewhere ahead, and the wool-damp smell of coats drying nearer the vestibule. A soft knock sounds from the compartment beside yours. 2 measured taps, followed by the almost noiseless turn of a latch. The attendant you first met has already moved on down the corridor. You hear a door open, a murmur pitched low enough to be part of the room tone. Then the door ease shut again. The sounds do not travel far on the carpet. They arrive and fade close to where they are made, leaving the rest of the car undisturbed. Your own compartment door stands half open. The attendant reaches it just as you do and places his fingertips briefly to the edge, guiding it wider. Inside is lamplight and polished wood, a compact room built for travel. For now, the seats remain in their daytime arrangement, facing each other beneath the window. Later, they will change shape. You can see the possibility of that in the seams of the upholstery, in the clean geometry of fittings that will lower, fold, and tuck away when the hour comes. But evening has only begun, and the room is still open enough to receive you. Your bag is set where your hand can find it easily. A folded timetable lies on the small ledge near the window, though you do not feel any need to read it. On a train like this, the evening moves by rooms. Dinner next, then the lower light of the lounge, then the dome, where the outside world broadens once before the night draws inward again. You understand this almost at once, not as a plan to keep, but as a sequence already prepared around you. The attendant steps back just enough to give you the room, while remaining available at its edge. His manner has the calm precision of someone who has repeated these gestures so often that they have become lighter with practice instead of heavier. He mentions the dinner hour in a voice that stays low and level, not to hurry you, only to place the next comfort within reach. Later, he says, the lounge will remain open, and the dome car beyond is clear tonight when the cloud lifts between snowbands. The berth will be made in its time. Water will appear where it should. Blankets will be turned back. He mentions dinner, the lounge, and the berth later. You rest your fingertips on the compartment's doorframe. The varnished wood is smooth and faintly warm. Under that touch, you feel a second, smaller vibration than the one in the floor. A fine tremor passing through frame, wall, and fittings alike. It is the same movement in another register, translated upward from the rails. From farther down the sleeper comes the muted clink of a glass being set somewhere onto a shelf. Then the brief rustle of paper. Then nothing distinct at all. The car absorbs individual sounds and returns them softened. You find yourself listening not for events, but for textures. The brushed weather at the windows, the low mechanical hum under the steam heat, the faint creak of leather from a neighboring compartment as someone settles into a seat. When you slide one hand from your glove, the air inside the car touches your skin with a dry warmth that feels earned after the platform cold. Your fingers have been curled around the strap of your case without your noticing. Now they uncurl one by one. The simple act of setting the glove down on the seat seems to mark your arrival more than any spoken word could have done. Outside is cold. Inside, everything has a place. The train bends through another curve. It is long enough that you can sense the motion travel through the cars in sequence. First, a slight draw to one side, then a return through center, then the answering lean the other way. The brass hook in your compartment gives the smallest tap against the panel. Your coat shifts and stills. Through the window, a dark ridge passes close, its tree line smudged by snow. Then the view opens for a breath to a pale expanse where the last light has caught on a slope. You could remain here and watch, but you step back into the corridor and walk a little way toward the vestibule end. The narrow runner carpet continues beneath your feet with a firmness that keeps each step nearly soundless. Along one wall, compartment doors repeat at regular intervals, each with its own brass handle. Along the other, windows hold the dimming mountain world in separate panels, each one briefly framing snow-bright embankments, black pines, or the blurred reflection of the corridor itself. Near the vestibule, the scent of wool coats is stronger. Moisture from melted snow has begun to lift from hems and cuffs into the warmed air. There is also that trace of black tea again, fuller now, as if a cup has recently been carried through. The vestibule door remains shut, but you can feel the colder seam of it from a short distance away, a subtle narrowing in the warmth. The train's motion is more pronounced here between cars, enough to remind you that this sheltered corridor is suspended within a moving chain of steel and glass crossing the mountains after dusk. Another attendant passes carrying folded linen over one arm. These are smaller pieces, likely for the compartments, and they smell faintly of starch and clean cotton as he goes by. He nods once, not breaking stride. The linen remains level despite the sway. You turn back toward your compartment at an unhurried pace. The corridor seems slightly changed already, though only a few minutes have passed. Not dimmer exactly, but more settled into its own evening register. The low lamps along the wall have become enough. The outside light has fallen another degree, so that the windows now reflect more of the sleeper's interior than the landscape beyond. At your door, the attendant has returned without fanfare. He is not inside the compartment, only near it, making some final small adjustment to the latch so it closes more cleanly. His polished shoes are planted at a slight angle to the floor, compensating for the train's lean in a way that looks effortless until you notice how exact it is. When he sees you, he steps aside and lets the space become yours again. A few words about dinner if you would like to go through when ready. No urgency in the phrasing, only assurance. The dining car is ahead, bright with linen and warm bowls, and there will be a place for you there. The rest of the night, he implies, will know what to do once you begin. You thank him, and even that feels almost larger than the moment requires. He inclines his head and moves on, his footfalls absorbed one after another by the runner carpet, until they disappear into the farther end of the car. Inside your compartment, the air is warmer than before. The window has begun to purl at the edges where the cold meets the sleeper's heat. You sit for a moment on the upholstered seat and place both hands on your knees, simply to feel the train carry its motion through your body now that you are no longer walking against it. The sway reaches you through the cushion and the frame beneath, broad and even. Somewhere beyond the wall, a door is eased shut, and after that the corridor grows still enough that you can hear the weather brushing the glass in a steady, rain-softened hush. Your coat hangs just outside on its brass hook, drying in the warm car. Steam heat rises under the window. The panelling smells faintly of cedar polish. The lamp throws a low, amber circle over the seat opposite. Chapter 2. White Linen. Dinner in the dining car as snow falls outside. A little later, when your eyes have adjusted to the train's evening light, there comes a light touch at the door and the attendant's polished shoes pause in the corridor beyond. The motion of the car carries through the latch first, then through the floor under your feet. And when you open the door, he is already half-turned, ready to guide rather than summon. Dinner is being served. The words are offered in the same manner your coat was taken earlier, with no demand in them, only a neat continuation of the night's order. Yet they land differently. Until now, you have still been managing yourself, your bag, your coat, the weather in your sleeves, the small private arrangements of travel. At the invitation, you stop managing the evening yourself. You step out into the corridor, where the narrow runner gives slightly under your soles, and the brass hooks along the wall keep their faint, almost imperceptible sway as the train enters another curve. Your wool coat remains where it was hung, drying in the steam heat, its shoulders softened now, no longer carrying the weather's chill. Near the vestibule, there is still that trace of black tea and damp wool, but as you move farther along, another scent takes over. Warm bread, broth, cedar polish carried from the sleeper woodwork, and the clean heat of the dining car ahead. Dinner is waiting, and so is your place. The passage between cars is brief and familiar in the body at once. A hand rests on the rail, cool metal under the palm. The train shifts beneath you, not sharply, but with the long side-to-side persuasion of mountain track. You cross the joining plates and hear, under the muted rail song, snow brushes the exterior with a softened, rain-like sound. Then the dining car opens around you. It is brighter here, though not by much. The light falls downward from shaded fixtures and settles over the tables in even pools, leaving the upper corners of the car in amber dimness. White linen lies smooth across each table. Heavy silver rests in precise arrangement beside each setting, and the porcelain catches the light with a warm ivory sheen. Nothing glitters too much. Nothing calls attention to itself. The effect is orderly rather than grand. A steward draws back a chair for you with the same practiced economy you have already begun to recognize on this train. As you come to the table, he turns the water glass a fraction so its rim sits clear of your sleeve, then stills the chair with 2 fingers against the wood before you sit. The gesture is so small it might be missed, but it is exact. You pause there a moment longer than necessary, one hand on the chair back, taking in the white cloth, the silver, the dark window at your side. Then you sit, and the upholstered seat receives your weight without a sound. Beneath the tablecloth, your knees find the polished edge of the table frame, and below that, through shoe soles and carpet and the structure of the carriage, the rails continue their steady cradle. You feel at once that dinner here will not be hurried. Nothing here is hurried. Across the window, the last of the mountain dusk has darkened into a deep blue that is nearly black. Snow threads past the glass in slanting lines, visible only when the carriage lights catch them. Beyond, when the snow thins for a moment, there are hints of slope and fir, and a pale seam of ridge where old snow still gathers light. Then the view closes again, and the window becomes mostly a dark pane carrying your own reflection in softened outline, along with the room's low gold lamps and white table settings repeated faintly in the glass. Water is poured. The sound is small and exact. A bread plate is set down. Silver is adjusted by less than an inch. Voices remain low, never rising above the crockery. Somewhere farther down the car, a spoon touches a cup. Somewhere nearer, a chair leg shifts and is set right again. The train absorbs every sound and rounds it off. When the soup arrives, it is placed before you with both care and confidence, and not quickly. The steward lowers the bowl through the lamplight until it hovers for a breath above the linen, steady in his hands while the car gives one of its long, gentle sways. Then porcelain meets table with a soft, scented certainty. He sets the bowl where your hands can reach it easily. The porcelain is thick enough to keep the heat. Steam lifts from it in a pale ribbon, carrying the smell of stock and herbs, and when your hands come around the bowl, the warmth settles into your palms immediately. It is a direct kind of comfort, simple and complete. Your fingers curve against the smooth glaze. Heat moves into the pads of your thumbs, into the heels of your hands, and for a moment, all you notice is the heat of the bowl in your hands. You do not need to begin at once. The bowl can be held first. That is part of the pleasure here. White linen under your wrists, porcelain against your hands, the faint rise of steam over your face. Outside, the dark window carrying those fine passing threads of snow. In the sleeper car you are received, here you are served, and the difference is slight but real. You do not have to think about what comes next. The meal arrives already arranged, already timed to the pace of the rails. When you lift the spoon, the silver has a reassuring weight to it. Not ornate, only substantial, balanced properly in the hand. The first mouthful is warm enough to notice, but not enough to startle. It spreads through you in the measured way heat does after coming in from weather, beginning at the mouth and throat, and then settling lower, where it loosens something that had remained braced from travel without your quite realizing it. You set the spoon down and hear only the faintest contact against the plate beneath the bowl. The linen has a grain to it under your fingertips, fine and dry and tightly woven. You trace it once without thinking while you look toward the window. The train leans, and the room leans with it. Not enough to disturb anything, only enough for the water in your glass to shift its level, and for the suspended lights to show the movement by a fraction. The meal is part of the journey. The mountains continue, the snow continues, the rails continue. Dinner simply takes place inside that motion. A basket is offered, lined with folded cloth to keep the rolls warm. You choose one and feel the tender resistance of the crust before it gives. Butter, set out earlier, has softened just enough in the car's warmth to spread cleanly. The knife glides through it and leaves a pale satin track across the bread. Steam heat reaches even here, though less insistently than in the sleeper. It mingles with the cedar polish from the paneling and the faint kitchen warmth that comes and goes each time the service door opens and closes. Then the room seems to widen again. At the next table, someone laughs once, softly, and stops. A service door opens. A brighter rectangle of kitchen light appears, then shuts. The train gives a longer sway through a curve, and all the hanging fixtures answer it together by the smallest degree. No one in the dining car appears rushed. The stewards move in lines that have been repeated so often they no longer need to be thought about. A hand gathers an empty plate at the exact moment your attention has drifted to the window. A glass is replenished before you have noticed it lowering. The room is cared for by these small corrections. You are left alone in all the places where aloneness is pleasant, and assisted in all the places where assistance makes the evening easier. You return to the soup between glances at the window. At times, the snow against the window seems almost like rain, a brushed, fine movement that softens the edges of the outside world rather than obscuring it completely. At times, the pane clears enough to offer a stand of black pines in quick procession, each trunk appearing and passing with the train's own calm insistence. Then, only your reflection remains again, your hands around the porcelain, your shoulders more settled than before, the white cloth lit under your wrists. You find yourself slowing to the train's pace without deciding to. A smaller spoonful, a longer pause. Bread broken into 2 even pieces rather than torn quickly. The body understands before the mind does that there is no advantage in finishing early. Another course will come when it comes. The steward knows the order. The kitchen knows the order. When the bowl is at last lifted away, the absence of its warmth remains in your hands for a few moments, as if the porcelain has left a shape there. You rest your palms on the linen and feel the cooler cloth draw off that heat little by little. A fresh plate appears. Silver is shifted with a brief, muted note. The meal goes on in the same composed way, each course arriving with enough space around it for you to notice texture and temperature, and not much else. Outside, the windows have fully turned to night. The mountains are mostly guessed now from the way the dark seems to rise and fall beyond the glass. Once, for a few seconds, the snow thins and a ridge shows itself, pale under moon-hidden cloud, then slips away behind another stand of trees. You do not need the full view. The suggestion is enough. You can't see much of the mountains now, but their presence still shapes the room. A cup is set down near the end of the meal, and the scent of black tea rises in the steam. It meets the cedar and the polished wood and the warm cloth smell of the car, and for a moment you are aware of how completely the train has become its own interior climate. Steam heat under the windows, weather brushing the outside, silver and linen and porcelain arranged against the mountain dark. You curl your fingers around the cup and feel a second, lighter warmth where the bowl's heat had been stronger before. This one is narrower, more delicate, but just as steady. The dining car has grown quieter as the evening advances, not emptier exactly, but more inward. Conversations taper and leave longer spaces between them. One table has already been cleared and reset, the linen smoothed again with a palm. Another pair of travellers sit with their cups before them, looking not at each other, but out into the dark, content to let the train provide the continuity. The crockery sounds are fewer now. The rails beneath them are easier to hear. You stay a little longer over the tea, because staying a little longer is part of the design of the room. The cup warms your fingertips. The saucer makes a faint ring when you set it down. The carriage sways and rights itself, sways and rights itself, and each movement passes through the chair back into your spine with such regularity that you no longer separate it from your own breathing. In this car, among white linen and heavy silver and the memory of a warm bowl in your hands, you have crossed another small distance in the night's progression. You feel less like a traveller than when you boarded. At last, the steward returns, not to hurry you, only to gather what is finished. The chair eases back as you rise. Linen lies uncreased where your hands had rested. Beyond the dark window, the snow still passes in those fine diagonal threads, and the glass carries a low reflection of the room behind you. When you step into the aisle, the motion of the train meets you again more fully, and you place a hand for a moment on the seat back beside you, feeling the leather's cool smoothness before moving on. Ahead, the bar car is dimmer. You leave the dining car with the warmth of the bowl still remembered in your palms, and the taste of tea still faint on your tongue, while behind you, the white linen remains spread under the lamps, and the mountains continue unseen beyond the snow-dark glass. Chapter 3. A quiet nightcap in the low-lit bar car. You leave the dining car slowly. The warmth of the bowl still seems to linger in your hands, and the white linen, the silver, the amber light under the shades continue behind you after the door has swung shut. Between cars, the narrow passage gives a brief reminder of the mountain night beyond the train. The window in the connecting door is darkened by snow and by your own reflection, and beneath your feet the plates shift with a measured rise and settle that belongs only to rail travel, a movement peculiar to rail travel. Then the bar car is dimmer. It is not a bright room and does not need to be. A lamp burns over the polished counter, another over a pair of leather chairs set near the window, and farther in, small pools of light rest on glossy tabletops. The room is warmer than the corridor and dimmer than the dining car, with the scent of polished wood, a trace of citrus from a recently pared twist, and, under it all, the same cedar polish and steam heat that follow through the train like a familiar note. You pause only long enough to let your eyes settle into the amber dark. The bar car is occupied, but lightly. A couple sit shoulder to shoulder beneath the window, saying very little. Someone farther down the room turns a page and then leaves the paper folded on a knee. The glass in the frames gives back only fragments of the outside now. A passing pallor where snow catches the train's own light, then black pines, then nothing distinct at all. What reaches you most clearly is sound, the low, upholstered hush of the room, the faint clink from behind the bar, the long, even undercurrent of the rails. A lounge steward looks up as you enter, and in that glance, the next part of the evening arranges itself without effort. He does not step forward too quickly, or ask more than is needed. His jacket is dark, his cuffs neat, and his manner has the same practiced economy you have already met in the sleeper and in the dining car. You choose a seat by instinct, one of the leather chairs angled toward the window and the aisle at once, where you can rest without feeling put on display. The leather gives a little under your weight, cool first, then warming through your coat and the fabric beneath. One arm of the chair is smooth, the grain almost satin under your fingertips. The table beside it is small and round, its edge polished to a soft curve, close enough that your hand can find it without reaching. When the steward comes near, his voice remains low, carrying no farther than your chair. He asks what you would like, and you answer just as quietly. No further conversation is required. He inclines his head once, and that is enough. While he turns back to the bar, you listen. The bottle is lifted from the shelf with a short, padded sound. A glass is chosen. Ice is taken up with metal tongs and lowered in, one piece, then another, with a clean note that is immediately softened by the room. The pour itself is measured and unhurried. You can hear the liquid strike the glass, rise around the ice and settle. It is a small sound, but in the bar car, where everyone has already begun to draw inward, small sounds carry their own clarity.
He brings the drink over and places it within easy reach on the polished table beside your hand. The low ball catches the lamp in cut facets, each plane taking a little of the light and turning it deeper. The drink itself is amber, darker at the center, clearer at the rim where the glass thins. One cube touches another with a tiny click, then stills. The steward sets a folded napkin beneath the glass, adjusts it by no more than a finger's width, and leaves you to it with the courtesy of not lingering. For a moment you do not lift the glass. You simply rest your hand near it and feel the temperature gathered there. It is cool where your fingers close around it, and heavier than it first appears, with the ridges pressing lightly into your skin. As the train leans into a curve, the ice shifts and gives its first tiny, settling crack. A sound so slight you might miss it anywhere else. Here it arrives distinctly, in time with the carriage sway. The ice shifts with the carriage sway. You take a sip.
The drink is measured in every sense. Cool first from the ice, then warm, and slowly warming further as it rests. It suits the hour. After dinner, after the bright white of linen and porcelain, after the movement through the swaying passage between cars, this smaller ritual suits the narrowing of the evening. Your shoulders ease a fraction deeper into the leather. One foot shifts on the carpet and finds a steadier brace as the train rounds another mounting curve. Outside the window, the snow continues, though at this hour it reads less as individual flakes than as a brushed dimness against the glass, a pale motion over black. Now and then a stand of pines appears, their trunks too dark to separate from one another, their upper branches carrying enough snow to catch a little reflected light. Then the view closes again into your own faint reflection, the lamp behind you, the rim of your glass, the edge of your sleeve. The room goes on around you in low register. Someone near the counter lets out the small breath that follows the first sip of a hot drink. A stool turns a few inches and settles back. The steward rinses something behind the bar, and the water runs briefly, then stops. No one raises a voice. No one needs to. The train provides a continuous ground beneath every other sound. A long woven texture of wheel song, carriage murmur, and the softened tapping of weather against the exterior. You find yourself listening more than looking. It is one of the particular comforts of being aboard at night. The eye has less to do, and the ear takes over without strain. You begin to notice the way the ice in your glass answers the movement of the carriage, not on every sway, but on certain turns, when the train leans a little farther and the cube loosens from the side with a minute crack. The sound repeats at irregular intervals, never sharp, always absorbed at once into the upholstery and wood around you. You begin to notice it each time the train leans farther. When you lift the glass again, a ring of condensation has formed near its base, darkening the napkin beneath. Your thumb finds one of the cut planes and rests there. The edges are precise, but not harsh. A room like this is full of surfaces meant to be touched without thought. Leather arms, polished table rims, the smooth footrail under the bar, the weight of a glass that sits correctly in the hand. The comfort is in how easily everything fits the hand. The steward passes once more, not to disturb you but to set another drink before the couple by the window. Their thanks are little more than a murmur. He places the glasses, straightens one by a fraction, and moves away. In his wake comes a fleeting scent of orange peel and spirits, then again the cedar and steam heat that seem to rise from the train itself. Somewhere beyond this car, back toward the sleeper, your coat will still be hanging on its brass hook, drying in that warm air with the trace of mountain damp slowly leaving the wool. That thought does not pull you away from where you are. It simply places you within the train's arrangement more firmly. You have eaten. You have come here. Later there will be another passage, another door, and the climb toward the dome where the glass roof curves over the night. But not yet. For now the evening stays small and close.
You take another sip, smaller this time, and set the lowball down with care. The base meets the tabletop with a softened click. Almost at once, the carriage gives a gentle lateral sway, and one cube settles again with that tiny internal crack, no louder than a fingernail lightly tapped against the glass. You begin to anticipate it without waiting for it. After a while, the room's rhythm feels natural. A lamp near the far end of the car catches in the brass trim of a framed notice and in the curve of a bottle shoulder behind the bar. The rest remains subdued. Dark blue upholstery, the warm brown of wood, the black mirror of the windows. It occurs to you that the room has already thinned itself of anything unnecessary. There is enough light to see the amber in the glass, enough sound to know the train is moving steadily through the mountains, enough company to keep the space inhabited without making demands upon it.
The muscles across your back release into the chair. Your jaw unclenches. One hand remains around the glass, not because you are thirsty, but because the weight of it is pleasant there. The train's motion reaches you through several layers now, through rail and carriage, through floor and chair frame, through leather, cushion and wall and cloth, until what arrives is not vibration exactly, but a measured side-to-side persuasion. The steward, seeing that your glass is still half full, does not approach again. This too is part of the craft, to know when to complete a ritual and when to leave it undisturbed. He polishes a stemmed glass behind the bar with a white cloth, turning it slowly by the bowl. The movement is efficient and familiar. He sets it upside down on the shelf, lines its base with the others, and lets his hands come to rest for a moment on the counter. Snow brushes the window. With that rain-softened hush, the whole train seems to gather into itself. It is weather translated by glass and speed and distance into something almost continuous. You can imagine the flakes crossing the beam of the carriage lights, vanishing into dark cuttings between the pines, settling on ridges you cannot see from here. But the bar car keeps your attention close. The leather under your forearm, the condensation cooling your fingertips, the tiny crack of ice, the polished table reflecting the lower half of the glass in a blurred amber oval. At length you finish the drink, not quickly and not ceremoniously, simply because the hour has advanced by a few more curves of track, and the glass has become lighter in your hand. The last sip is colder, carrying more of the melt. When you set the lowball down, the remaining ice shifts once, and then grows still. A pale crescent of water clings to the inside. The steward appears as if he had known the exact moment without watching. He lifts the glass only after your hand has fully left it, gives the slightest nod, and asks whether you would care for anything more. You do not. The answer is easy. There is another place ahead still, one with higher windows and a broader dark beyond them. He takes the glass away, leaving the napkin behind for a moment, before folding it in on itself and slipping it neatly onto his tray. The polished ring on the tabletop catches the light and begins already to fade as the moisture dries in the warm air. Your hand rests where the glass had been, touching the smooth wood that is now faintly cool. When you rise, the leather releases you gradually. The room shifts around that small act of standing. Chair legs settle, coat hem falls straight. The train's motion becomes more noticeable again, through your knees and feet. You steady yourself with 2 fingers on the table edge, then let them slide away. Around you, the bar car remains in its low amber register, carrying on with its own subdued life as you prepare to move forward. Ahead, beyond another passage and another door, the dome waits with its curved glass roof and its deeper blue reflections. There the world will widen once more before it narrows for the night. But you leave this room carrying its smaller rhythm with you, the polished table at your side, and that tiny settling crack of ice, answering the mounting curves as faithfully as the rails below. Chapter 4. Moonlit mountain views from the park. Car observation dome. First, the glass is no longer in your hand. Then, the leather gives back your weight. Then, the amber room falls behind you with its polished tables and its low voices already thinning into the general hush of the train. In the passage between cars, the floor changes beneath your feet, firmer for a moment over the coupling, and the air carries a cooler thread from the sealed seams and window edges before the next door yields and warmth settles around you again. Ahead, a short stair curves up into the dome. You place one hand on the rail as the train leans through a mountain bend, and the metal is smooth from use, neither cold nor warm, simply present beneath your palm. Each step lifts you farther from the enclosed rooms below. The sounds of the lower cars do not disappear, but they spread out and flatten, becoming part of a broader murmur. The undernote of wheels on rail, the faint joined rattle of glass and fittings, the padded shift of someone turning a page behind you. By the time you reach the top, even that small human sound has settled into the architecture of the car. You want to see what the mountains look like from here. The dome opens above you in curved glass and deep blue reflection. By day it would be all distance and horizon, but at this hour the shape of it is clearer than any single view beyond it. The arch overhead, the sloping panes on either side, the dark seams between them, and your own dim outline passing briefly across the window before the outside takes over again. You choose a seat without needing to consider much, one angled toward the side window and the sweep of the roof, upholstered enough to receive you without asking your body to arrange itself carefully. As you sit, the cushion settles and the train's motion becomes more legible through it. In the bar car, the sway had been translated through a table and through the cool weight of the cut crystal in your hand. Here, there is less between you and the movement. It reaches you through the seat frame, through the soles of your shoes, through the slight answering shift of your shoulders as the car enters a curve and then eases out again. The air in the dome is a little different from the lower cars. The steam heat still rises through the train, but near the glass there is a tempered edge that keeps you aware of the weather outside. Not a draft, only a difference. You can feel it at your forehead when you lean back and tip your face slightly upward, where the curved roof carries the night over you. Snow moves across that glass in a fine, slanting grain, but the sound it makes is not the dry hiss you might expect. Instead, it comes softened, brushed thin by speed and melt, more like rain passing over a window at a distance, a continuous wet murmur spread lightly along the carriage. Beyond the glass and the weather, the mountains arrange themselves slowly. They do not present all at once. A ridgeline lifts into view, pale where snow has caught and held the moon. Then it slips behind a stand of black pines close to the track, their trunks hidden, their upper branches passing in a dark comb against the sky. Then there is open slope again, then rock, then another fringe of trees. The scene changes slowly. It carries each piece to the window and then away. You find that your eyes stop trying to gather the whole landscape. There is too much of it for that, and too little light for insistence. Instead, you begin to notice what can be noticed from one breath to the next. The faint silver along a ridge where the snow lies wind-smoothed. The way the nearest pines rise abruptly from below the window line and vanish behind you before you have fully traced their shape. The darker mass of the mountain beyond them, so broad that it seems at first to be sky.
Farther off, where the clouds have thinned, moonlight lays a diluted glow across the higher slopes, enough to separate one range from another without making anything sharp. Somewhere lower in the car, a door closes with careful pressure rather than a click. The sound rises to you, softened by carpet and upholstery, then disappears into the roofed space. No one speaks. There are other people here, though not many. You know it from the occasional transfer of weight through the floor, from the brief, dark shape of a sleeve reflected in the side glass, from the way one seat farther on bears the slight impression of use. Yet the company is diffuse, unarranged. No one requires anything from anyone else. The room functions almost as weather does, present, surrounding, undemanding. The train enters a longer curve. You feel it first in your middle, a mild sideward persuasion, then in the seat back as your shoulder settles against it. Outside, the angle changes. The trees that had been passing broadside begin to peel away, and for a few moments the view opens down the length of the train's path. The mountains on the far side draw back. The near embankment falls away. You are looking into the space the lower cars could only travel beside, not see into. Then, far below and suddenly clear, the Bow River catches the moon. It appears as a ribbon rather than a river at first, a narrow silver line laid into the darkness, too bright to belong to the land and too steady to be snow. You keep your eyes on it as the curve continues and more of it comes free from the pines. The water takes the light in broken lengths, now bright, now gone under the shadow of the bank, now bright again where the channel bends. It does not shine evenly. It answers the moon in pieces, each one brief and exact. For several breaths the river remains visible, and the longer it does, the more from here you can feel the height. The track is not merely above the valley but suspended over it, and the blackness around the water is no emptiness at all. It is depth and distance. It is the whole dark floor of the mountains opening beneath you at last. You follow the silver as long as the train allows. One bend of the channel reveals another. A brighter reach flares where the current lies open. Then a bank takes it. Then it returns, thinner now, running between masses of shadow that make its brightness seem all the more improbable. You see enough to understand what has been traveling beside you all this time, hidden below the lower windows, accompanying the train through the valley in silence. Then the pines gather again. One by one their pointed crowns rise through the lower edge of the glass and cross the river's reflection until the silver is cut into pieces and then lost entirely. What remains is the memory of that brightness running below the train, hidden now but still accompanying you through the valley. You keep looking where it was for a little while, the way you continue listening after a note has faded, because the shape of it remains in the eye even after the view has changed. The movement of the train seems gentler after that glimpse, though nothing has altered except your attention. In the dining car you had the table, the linen, the weight of the porcelain bowl warming your hands. In the bar car you had the low ball and the tiny shifting crack of ice keeping time with the sway. Here there is almost nothing to hold except the armrests under your palms and the broad, dark view moving past the glass. The train supplies the continuity. You settle farther back. The upholstery gives a little at your shoulders and behind your knees. One foot slides half an inch forward as the car straightens, then returns when the next bend begins. The motion is repetitive enough that your body begins to answer it before thought does. You do not need to study the curves to know they are coming. A slight pressure gathers under one hip, then evens out. The roof above receives another sweep of snow, rain-soft in sound. Somewhere beneath, the rails mark out their patient sequence, not loud, only regular, with the occasional lower note when the wheels pass over a joint or a changing grade. The windows nearest the roof hold a faint bloom where warmth from within meets the cold beyond the glass. Not enough to obscure the night, only enough to soften its edges. Along one seam, a bead of condensation has formed and remains suspended, quivering almost invisibly with the vibration of the car. It does not run. It simply gathers itself and stays there, reflecting a pin of interior light no larger than a needlepoint. You notice it for a while, then let it return to the background with the rest. Time in the dome loosens from the clocks below. There is no course being served here, no fresh pour being set by your hand, no attendant's polished shoes crossing the runner carpet. Beyond this car there is no larger room, no higher roof, no farther view to be had from within the train. After this, the spaces will begin to contract again. Down the stair, through the passage, back along the corridor with its brass hooks and cedar warmth, and eventually to the compartment where the lamp will be lowered and the berth prepared. The thought passes through you without haste. It does not call you away. It merely takes its place among the other known things of the night. For now, you remain where the glass curves overhead and the mountains reveal themselves by portions. Another bend begins. Again the train leans, and again the valley opens just enough to show a suggestion of water below. Less complete this time, only a brief silver stroke between trunks before the trees close ranks. It is enough. After the river's fuller appearance, even this fragment carries its echo. The longer you sit, the more the reflections in the glass become familiar companions rather than interruptions. Your own outline, dim and blue, appears over the snow-bright ridges and then fades as the angle changes. A seat back hovers for a moment above a stand of pines. A low lamp from below glows in the side pane. It reminds you that even here, under all this glass, you are still inside the train's ordered shelter, carried through cold country by steam heat, polished wood, and the steady labor of wheels you never need to see. At last, you shift your hands from the armrests and place one palm briefly against the window beside you. The glass is cool, but not biting. Its chill stays at the skin, while the rest of you remains in the tempered air of the dome. Through that touch, you feel almost nothing of the outside world directly. Only the faintest tremor from the carriage and the firmness of the pane set between weather and warmth. Even that is enough to mark the difference between the mountain night and the room that moves through it. When you draw your hand back, a pale print blooms for a moment and then thins. The train continues on through the curves. Pines rise and pass. Snow brightens the higher ridges where moonlight reaches them. Beneath the dark valley, hidden now more often than seen, the river keeps company with the line. And after a while, without any clear decision, you begin to feel the turn back toward the lower cars. Not from restlessness, only from the natural narrowing of the hour. The berth is not before you yet, but it has entered the body's expectation. The corridor's enclosed warmth after all this glass, the compartment lamp lowered, the small, practiced transformations by which a seat becomes a bed and watching becomes rest. The dome still holds you for another moment or two, but no longer entirely. Something inward has already begun to gather, and you begin to feel ready to go back down.
Chapter 5. Walking the sleeper corridor. After the lounge has quieted, after a while you rise and turn toward the stair. The curved roof still carries its deep blue reflections above you, and beyond them the ridges continue in their patient procession, snow bright where the moon reaches them, black where the pines gather thickly along the slopes. You place one hand for a moment on the back of the seat you are leaving, feeling the faint vibration in the frame. The descent changes the scale at once. Above, the mountains had been spread wide across the glass, the river appearing and disappearing far below in a silver thread. Here, on the steps, your world becomes handrail, carpet,
the measured placement of each foot as the carriage leans through another curve. The metal rail is cool beneath your palm at first touch, then less so as your hand settles there. Below, the lower car glows in lower amber light, and the train's motion returns from distant view to near sensation. A sideward ease, a mild correction, the continuous undernote of wheels on rail. You pass through the lower level of the observation car and into the intercar passage, where the temperature shifts by a degree and the sounds gather closer around you. The door gives under your hand with a practiced resistance, then closes behind you with a padded thud. Window glass on either side is dark, except for the pale blur of weather brushing past. Snow against the carriage has its rain-softened sound tonight, more hush than patter, as if each flake dissolves into moisture before it can strike. For a few breaths, you stand in that narrow connector, feeling the flex between cars under your shoes, the rubber flooring yielding slightly, the couplings translating the mountain curves into a slow, articulate sway. Then you move on into the sleeper. The corridor is narrower, warmer, and more fragrant with cedar polish and steam heat. The runner carpet lies straight along the floor, muting your steps so completely that you feel them more in your ankles and knees than hear them. Along the wall, the brass coat hooks catch the corridor lamps in dim points, each one shifting by almost nothing as the train rounds another bend. The corridor feels different now. Earlier it held expectation, the sense of several rooms and rituals still ahead. The linened tables in the diner, the leather chair in the bar car, the dome roof lifting the night above you. Now those places lie behind you in the order they were meant to come, and the passage feels less like an introduction than a return. You know where the carpet narrows slightly near the vestibule. You know the way the wall gives back the warmth from the radiators. You know the faint mingling in the air, cedar from the polished woodwork, steam heat with its dry metallic trace, black tea somewhere recently poured, and wool coats drying near the end of the car where snowmelt has not yet fully left them. The familiarity does not diminish the pleasure of it. It steadies it, the sense of being carried toward a room already waiting for you. As you walk, the corridor offers its small signs that the train is being put in order for the night. A latch clicks once behind a closed door, not sharply, but with the cushioned finality of someone setting a compartment right before turning down a lamp. Farther on, a hanger taps lightly against wood, then is still. From one compartment comes the brief scent of soap and warm water as a door opens an inch and closes again. Nothing interrupts the calm progression of the car. Each sound enters and settles into the larger rhythm of rail and weather. You pass the place where your coat was hung earlier, and though you do not stop at once, you glance toward it almost automatically, the way you check for a familiar object in a room before your hand reaches for it. The wool is still there on its brass hook, darker where the fabric remains a little damp near the shoulders, lighter where the heat has already dried it through. Your scarf hangs folded over one sleeve. The train leans, and the coat moves less than a finger's width away from the panelling, then back again. It is satisfying to see it still there, drying evenly in the heat. You find yourself thinking not of the weather outside now, nor of the miles still to come, but of the simple next thing. Returning. Letting the night be arranged around you. A pair of polished shoes appears ahead before the rest of the attendant comes into view. Even at this distance, you recognize the measured economy of his movement, the way he keeps one shoulder slightly angled so that passing in the narrow corridor will be effortless when you meet. He carries no tray now, only a folded cloth over one forearm and a small keyring that makes the slightest brushed sound against the seam of his jacket when the train shifts. His reappearance feels less like interruption than confirmation. Near the vestibule, the air carries a slightly stronger note of wet wool and outside cold brought in on hems and cuffs, though though even that has been gentled by the heat. Someone has left a cup on the narrow ledge by the end window, and the scent rising from it is black tea gone only just warm enough to drink. When the attendant reaches you, he gives the same small acknowledgement as before, in a low voice made for corridors and sleeping cars, neither formal nor familiar, just enough to mark that he has seen you and already accounted for what may be needed next. His glance flicks once toward your compartment, then back to you, and he quietly indicates that the berth can be made up whenever you are ready. The offer is placed lightly, without pressing the moment, yet it marks a turn in the evening. Until now, the night has still held open spaces in it, the dome above the river, the lounge, the corridor itself. In his few soft words, it chooses a smaller shape. You can answer with little more than a nod, which is enough. He inclines his head in return, and in that brief exchange, the next stage of the evening settles into place as naturally as the earlier ones did. Dinner announced, a drink poured, a seat in the dome found without fuss. Here, too, there is no need to plan anything. The staff move within it with a steadiness that lets you stop holding yourself slightly apart from rest. As you pass one another, the corridor narrows for a breath. His sleeve brushes the air near your shoulder, not touching, and the scent of starch and polished wool replaces the cedar for a moment. Then he is behind you, his shoes making almost no sound on the runner as he continues toward the vestibule, where perhaps another coat needs shifting on its hook, another compartment, another soft knock before Turndown. You do not turn to watch him go. It is enough to know he is there, carrying the night forward by these small acts of order, and that your place in that order is ready when you are. At the far end of the corridor, one of the compartment doors is eased shut. You do not see the hand that does it, only the controlled movement of the panel and the way the latch meets the strike plate without any hard report. Afterward, the corridor grows quieter. You continue at the same pace, one hand trailing now and then along the polished wood edge beneath the windows. Through the glass, the Rockies are reduced to fragments between reflections. A stand of black pines close to the line, a sloped bank where snow has gathered. Once a pale ridge caught and lost again before the train curves away. In the dome, the mountains had occupied your whole field of view. Here they arrive in narrow portions, framed by corridor windows and interrupted by the passing of your own reflection. It suits the hour better. You are moving toward enclosure, and no longer only with curiosity. You stop at your compartment at last and rest your fingers on the handle without opening it yet. The metal is cooler than the wood around it, and the train gives one long sideward inclination through a mountain curve, enough that you feel your balance answer in your feet. Behind the door is the compartment as you left it before dinner, before the bar car, before the dome. In another little while it will no longer be arranged for sitting, but for sleep. Lamp lowered, berth prepared, towel warming the hands, blanket turned back. You can picture the sequence without needing to see it begin. That in itself is restful. But now the restfulness carries a slight expectancy with it, as if the room has already started changing in your mind and waits only for you to let it happen.
You stand for one more moment and listen. Somewhere ahead a faucet is turned off. Further away, beyond 2 or 3 closed doors, comes the muffled thump of luggage being shifted under a seat or berth. Then silence again. The weather continues its brushed movement along the windows. Beneath all of it, the rails keep their even pattern. Not loud now, only persistent enough to be felt in the handle under your fingers and in the soles of your feet through the runner carpet. You are ready to go in. You open the compartment door and step inside, then leave it ajar behind you for a moment while the corridor remains visible in a narrow slice. Brass hook, panelled wall, the long line of carpet extending toward the vestibule lamps. From here, the passage looks still smaller, as if it has already begun to fold itself into the night. Another slight lean of the train shifts the hanging coat outside by the shoulder and lets it settle again. Then,
somewhere farther down, a second door is brought in with the same careful hand as the first, and the corridor grows more hushed once more. You close your own door gently, and the latch meets with a muted click. The sound is not an ending, only a reduction in scale. Outside the compartment, the train continues through snow and mountain dark, carrying the dome, the lounge, the diner, the corridor, and all their lamps in one long connected line. Inside, the air is warmer, the space smaller, and the next gestures of the evening are close at hand. The coat dries on its hook beyond the panel. Tea cools somewhere near the vestibule. The attendant is moving car by car, putting each room in order. And now, with the door shut and the berth soon to be made, you know exactly what will happen next, and are ready to meet it.
Chapter 6. Eucalyptus towel and Turndown service in the sleeper compartment. For a moment after the latch clicks, you remain where you are, one hand still near the door, feeling the compartment settle back around you after the larger spaces of the train. The dome's blue reflections are gone now, and the leather hush of the bar car, and the white linen order of the dining room. Here the scale is reduced to polished wood, a narrow ledge, the familiar seat, the reading lamp casting its amber circle, and beneath it all, the low, continuous motion of the rails passing under the mountains. The air carries cedar polish and steam heat, with that faint trace from the corridor beyond. Black tea somewhere cooling, wool coats drying by the vestibule, the whole sleeper gradually being put to rights for the night. You notice your own compartment differently on returning to it. Earlier it was a place to arrive in, to set down your things and continue on. Now the compartment feels arranged for night. The corners seem closer, though not cramped. The lamplight lower than before, though not dim. The train leans through a curve and rights itself, and the small objects on the shelf answer with the slightest shift of reflection. You can feel through the soles of your shoes the mild grain of vibration in the floor. Not enough to disturb anything, only enough to remind you that while this room encloses you, it is still moving through black pines and snow-bright ridges somewhere beyond the glass. Outside the door, a pair of steps passes along the runner carpet and slows. Even before the knock comes, you know who it is by the measured pace, by the way the steps slow outside your door. Then the knock itself, light against the panel, no more than needed. When you open the door, the attendant stands in the corridor with that same composed economy you have already come to trust. Dark jacket neat at the cuff, polished shoes reflecting the corridor lamp in a narrow line. One hand already occupied with the next part of the evening. He carries a folded towel on a small tray, and even before it is offered to you, the eucalyptus reaches you first. Clean and warm, faintly medicinal in the most pleasant way. The eucalyptus smells clean and warm, not sharp, not perfumed, only fresh enough to clear the last edges of wakefulness from your thoughts. Behind him, the corridor remains narrow and amber, the brass hooks along the wall catching a muted glint as the car leans. Your coat is still hanging where it was placed earlier, dark wool drying evenly in the heat. You step back to let him in, and he enters with the same practiced understanding with which dinner was served and your coat was first taken from your arm. The tray is set down without sound. The compartment door is eased nearly closed again, enough to reduce the corridor to a thin strip of warmer light. Then he turns to you and lifts the towel in both hands. You give him your hands almost without thinking. They have been on railings and door handles, around a soup bowl, around a cut crystal glass, resting on the arm of a dome seat while the Bow River flashed silver far below. Now they are simply tired hands, and the towel comes over them folded once, exactly as it should be. Warm weight first, then the heat through the cloth. The sensation is immediate and exact. The warmth settles over your fingers, across your knuckles, into the backs of your hands where the air from the windows and corridors had left a slight coolness you had not noticed until it began to leave.
The eucalyptus rises with the steam held in the fabric. He presses the towel lightly, not rubbing, only enclosing your hands for a few breaths, and the train sways under you both in a slow sideward measure that seems to lengthen the contact without hurrying it. You stand still for it. No instruction is needed. No conversation has to be made. The compartment has become a place where one action follows another in a sensible order, and your own part in it grows simpler with each step. The warmth works into your fingers first, then into your wrists, and with it comes that small release in the forearms and shoulders that arrives when the hands no longer need to hold anything. When the towel is lifted away, the air against your skin feels cooler for a second, though your hands keep the heat. They feel looser, lighter. A trace of moisture remains, not wetness, but the faintest softness over the skin, and the eucalyptus stays behind in a very thin layer of scent. The attendant folds the towel back on itself and carries it to the washstand, where he lays it neatly beside the basin, as though setting down the final tool after a task done properly. The washstand catches the lamp in small planes of reflection, wood trim, polished metal, the pale surface of the folded towel. Each one receives the light differently. You watch the washstand catch the lamp. The attendant reaches to the reading lamp and lowers it a little. The change is slight, more in angle than brightness, but the compartment alters at once. The light no longer spreads as far across the upper panelling. It settles nearer to the seat, the washstand, your hands. Shadows gather in the corners, not dark enough to erase detail, only enough to soften edges and bring the room inward. Outside the window, the snowy weather continues its rain-like brushing against the glass, a faint exterior texture beneath the carriage sound. He moves about the compartment with the calm exactness of someone who has done this many times and still does it carefully each time. A small item on the ledge is shifted half an inch to clear space. The curtain edge is checked. The door latch is touched once, confirming its place without any visible need to test it twice. You do not have to follow them closely. It is enough to hear the small contacts, the tray lifted, the towel set straight, a cuff grazing cloth, polished shoes changing position on the floor with almost no sound. You sit for a moment while he works, and the seat receives your weight with a familiar firmness. The compartment's warmth has deepened since you first entered at dusk. Steam heat moves through the sleeper with a steadiness unlike the mountain air beyond the windows, and the cedar polish in the wood trim gives the warmth shape, something dry and resinous beneath the cleaner scent of eucalyptus. The contrast with outside is no longer dramatic. It has become settled fact, snow beyond the glass, heat within the panelling, rails under both. From somewhere farther down the car comes the muted sound of another compartment being arranged. A latch, then a pause, a door eased inward. Nothing abrupt, only the sequence of night moving along the sleeper from room to room. You picture, without needing to see it, the attendant's route through the corridor, the brass hooks passing one by one, the runner carpet taking each step, each compartment reduced in turn from day arrangement to evening order. The thought is restful. When he returns from the washstand side of the compartment, he pauses just long enough to make sure you have no need of anything else. The question, if it exists, remains almost entirely in the gesture. You answer in the same way, with the smallest motion, content to let the room continue changing around you. The larger choices are over. What remains now is arrangement. Your hands are still warm. You rest them in your lap and feel the lingering heat where the towel had covered them, especially in the palms and along the fingers. It is a simple comfort, but because it is so local and immediate, it quiets other kinds of attention. You notice the smoothness of your own skin against itself, the way your thumbs rest without gripping, the way your shoulders have dropped slightly from their earlier position. The train rounds another curve, and your balance adjusts before you think about it. A slow answering shift through your hips and spine, then stillness again. The attendant bends briefly to open a lower cabinet and check what will be needed next. The movement is efficient and unshowy. Cloth is touched, a fixture confirmed, some small preparation made for the birth ritual still to come. You hear, more than see, the order of it, a catch released, a panel steadied, a hinge moving without complaint. The sounds blend into the undernote of the rails so naturally that they seem less like interruptions than additions to the train's own rhythm.
At the washstand, the folded towel has begun to cool, though it still gives off eucalyptus when the compartment sways and stirs the air. Beside it, the surfaces remain spare and ready. Nothing is crowded, nothing is left in the way. A thing is where your hand will find it later, and absent where it would trouble the eye or catch the sleeve. The room does not grow luxurious by becoming full. It becomes luxurious by becoming exact. For a little while you simply remain in that exactness. The lamp glows lower, the wood reflects less. The snowy weather brushes the window with that softened, rain-like murmur that has followed the train since dusk. In another part of the journey, you might have turned outward again, tried for one more look into the dark, one more glimpse of ridge or pine. But your attention stays on nearer things now. Warmth on the hands, the mild pressure of the seat, the faint movement of air near the lamp, the floor's steady vibration under your feet. The attendant straightens and gives the compartment one final, practiced survey before the next stage begins. His shoes catch the lamplight again as he shifts his stance, and then the light slides away from them when the train leans. You feel looked after. Care on the train is made of these exact placements and measured gestures. He moves toward the berth fittings now, and though the larger transformation has not yet begun, you can feel it approaching in the room's altered proportions. The compartment is no longer simply where you have returned after the dome and the corridor. It has entered the next part of its own design. Your warmed hands, the lowered lamp, the towel cooling on the washstand, the nearly closed door, the reduced light on the panelling, all of it has prepared the change without announcing it. You let yourself settle a little further into that preparation. The mountains remain outside, but at a greater remove now, translated into weather at the glass and the long pressure of curves under the wheels. The public cars are behind you in both distance and scale. Here, in this smaller amber space, thought has less to range over. Heat stays in your hands. Cedar and eucalyptus mix in the air. The attendant reaches for the first latch of the berth, and the train carries you on through the snow. Chapter 7. Lowering the berth and smoothing the sheets for night. The latch gives under the attendant's thumb with a small metal click, softened at once by the undernote of the rails. You hear it less as a separate sound than as part of the train's ongoing measure. One more note folded into the low vibration under the floor and the weather brushing the window. His polished shoes stay planted with the ease of practice while the carriage leans through another mountain curve, and you can feel, even seated, how he has adjusted his stance to the motion before the berth begins to move. The compartment is not large, and because of that, every action changes it. A hand to the latch, a turn of the wrist, a panel released from its daytime place, and the room starts giving itself over to night. The amber lamp throws a warm oval over the wood trim and the washstand where the eucalyptus towel rests, folded and cooling now after its brief heat against your hands. Cedar polish still rises from the panelling, joined by steam heat from the vent below, and the faintest trace of black tea somewhere beyond the door in the corridor. You notice how familiar these scents have become over the course of the evening. They no longer announce the train to you. They are simply the air you are breathing as the compartment changes shape. The attendant lowers the berth with an order so practiced and precise. Release, support, guide. There is no wasted movement in it, no flourish. Only the economy that has carried your coat to its brass hook, brought you to dinner beneath white Irish linen, and returned you here from the dome and its moonlit ridges without ever making the service itself obtrusive.
You watch his hands more than his face. They know where each edge will meet, where each hinge will give, how much pressure the frame wants before it yields. The berth comes down with a controlled descent, slower than you expect, as if everything on board moves with the same measured pace. Metal hidden inside the wall takes the weight, then passes it on. Wood aligns with wood. A folded section opens, another is drawn into place. The room that held a seat and a ledge a moment ago begins to present a bed instead, and you feel the shift not only in what you see, but in your own posture. Your shoulders lower a little, your feet rest more fully on the floor. It is easier to imagine the next hour when a bed is visible in the room. A narrow ladder appears briefly as part of the arrangement, its rungs counting the amber light, then is tucked away again with the same neat certainty. Even if you do not need it, it belongs to the sequence, and the sequence itself is part of the comfort. Nothing is improvised, nothing is searched for. Each piece has its place, and each place has already been accounted for before you think to wonder about it. The attendant folds the ladder into its slot and checks it with a touch that is almost lighter than the train's sway. Then the mattress is guided down. He brings it with both hands, not dropping but lowering, letting its weight arrive in stages until the last inches give way and it settles with a muted thump, more felt than heard. The sensation reaches you through the soles of your feet and the seat beneath you, a small downward answer in the room itself. For that instant, the berth stops being frame and becomes surface. Then it stills at once, except for the motion the whole carriage shares. The mattress now moves with the carriage, the side-to-side drift of the curves, the fine, constant trembling of steel on rail. You find yourself imagining not the sight of it, but the first contact. Your hip meeting that surface, your shoulder following, the slight give under you already carrying the rhythm of the journey. The attendant smooths a hand over the mattress, confirming by touch what has just come to rest. Then the sheets come. They have been folded flat and exact, and when he opens them they make a low cotton sound, crisp but subdued in the warm compartment. The bottom sheet is drawn into place first. You see the corners found, the edge aligned, the fabric pulled with an even pressure that travels from one hand to the other. He does not yank or snap, he draws. The train sways and he draws again, keeping the line true despite the movement underfoot.
Now the sheet begins to tighten, not all at once, but in a series of small clarities. A faint looseness disappears near the foot. A shallow rise flattens under his palm. One side is tucked, then the other, fingers moving under the edge with a quick inward turn. The corners are made with a fold so direct and clean that the corners fall neatly into place. You watch the surface become plain and smooth, without ridges, without gathers, and feel a corresponding anticipation in your own body. The thought of sliding between such exactness, of calves and forearms meeting fabric that will not twist or bunch, of lying down into something prepared to the measure of your length. The top sheet follows, unfolded with the same low cotton murmur. It floats for hardly a second before settling, then is drawn toward the head of the berth and squared against the mattress. The attendant's hands travel over it, one after the other, pressing out the last little rises in the fabric. In the lamp's amber light, the sheet looks cool and clean, though the compartment itself is warm. You can already feel in imagination the first touch of it against your forearm, the brief freshness before your own heat gathers under the covers. Above the berth, the compartment has become more enclosed without feeling close. The walls are where they were, the lamp where it was, the washstand still carrying the folded towel. Daytime angles have given way to horizontal ones. The eye no longer travels toward the corridor or the seat,
or the suggestion of movement into other cars. It comes to rest here, at mattress height, where the night will continue in a much smaller radius. You find yourself measuring things by reach now. Lamp within reach, shelf within reach, blanket soon within reach. The world beyond the door and window has not gone anywhere, but it has moved farther out in your attention. The blanket is lifted next. Its weight shows in the attendant's forearms before it settles onto the bed. He spreads it with a broad, practiced motion that lets the fabric open fully before it drops. The wool descends and the bed changes again, becoming ready. The corners are found and smoothed. The top is turned back in a clean fold, enough to show the sheet beneath and to make the first entry into bed simple later on. The blanket is not heavy in a burdensome way. It is substantial in the old rail sense of the word, made to keep out the cold. As he works, the weather at the window continues its rain-softened brush against the carriage. Snow is still falling somewhere beyond the glass, but here it comes to you as a fine, even sound, almost like fingertips moving over paper at a distance. The train answers with its own steadier texture, the undercarriage rhythm, the slight rise and settle through the springs, the occasional deepened sway when a curve takes hold. A corner tucked, a fold adjusted, a hand smoothing the blanket flat. Each action enters the same measured cadence. The attendant steps back half a pace to look, then forward again to make one more correction at the lower edge. This is where his care becomes most visible. Not in grand gestures, but in the refusal to leave a line slightly off when it can be made exact with 2 fingers and a brief bend of the wrist. The blanket corners are smoothed once more. The turned back edge at the top is evened. He runs his palms along both sides of the berth, not pressing hard, simply checking the fall of the fabric and the shape of the bed beneath it. Then comes the final tucking. He lifts the outer edge of the blanket slightly and turns it in along one side, not tightly enough to confine, only enough to make a warm channel where your body will lie. The motion is small, but it changes everything. He crosses to the other side and repeats the gesture with the same pressure, the same economy, the same brief inward turn of the hand. You can almost feel the result before you touch it. The tucked sides holding their line when the carriage sways, the blanket yielding at the top and keeping close below. The narrow berth becoming a place your body can enter and be kept.
The attendant adjusts the tuck at the foot with 2 fingers, then smooths upward once more. The blanket lies flat, firm at the edges, easy at the opening. You picture your legs lengthening into that contained warmth, your shoulder slipping beneath the turned back fold, your feet finding the end of the berth and no farther. The narrow berth now defines the room, and, in doing so, has become more inviting than any larger space on the train. The pillow comes last. He lifts it, gives it a single, settling pat, and places it square at the head of the berth beneath the amber lamp. The pillowcase is as crisp as the sheet, but fuller, ready to give at once when your head meets it. For a moment, the whole arrangement is complete enough to be taken in at a glance. Mattress settled into the frame, sheet drawn tight, blanket smoothed and tucked, pillow placed. Beyond the nearly closed door, the corridor remains in its later hour hush. You are aware of it only in fragments. A band of warmer light at the threshold, the faint scent of wool and steam heat from farther down near the vestibule, perhaps the slightest passing shift in the runner carpet as the carriage leans. Your coat is still on its brass hook out there, drying where it was hung at dusk. The white linen of the dining car, the cut crystal low ball with its settling ice, the curved glass of the dome and the Bow River catching moonlight far below. Each of those spaces has narrowed into this one berth, this one lamp, this one prepared bed. The attendant rests his hand for a moment on the berth frame, not idly, but as one last check against movement and fit.
The frame answers with the same low vibration that has run through every car tonight. Satisfied, he lets his hand fall away. The bed is made. It is no longer arranged for sitting up, for passing through, for considering where to go next. It is arranged for lying down and being carried. You feel that change in yourself as plainly as you see it in the room. The mind, which could roam easily in the observation dome or follow the ordering of courses in the dining car, has less distance to travel here. Attention comes nearer, to the berth, to the turned back blanket, to the warmth gathered in the compartment after the towel, the lamp, the bed making. To the next simple act, still ahead, of stepping out of your shoes and crossing the short space to the mattress now swaying almost imperceptibly in place. The attendant gives the blanket edge one final smoothing pass, from the top fold down toward the foot, and the fabric lies flat under his hand. No crease catches the light afterward. He straightens, and for a moment the compartment is still except for the train's movement under everything. The wall, the lamp, the berth frame, your own breathing. The weather continues at the window in that softened, watery hush. You look at the bed and begin, without effort, to imagine yourself already inside it. Your shoulder fitted beneath the turned-back blanket, your knees easing straight into the narrow warmth, the tight sheet cool for an instant against your skin before it takes your heat, the mattress receiving your weight and carrying it into the train's long, steady sway. The bed is ready, and you want to get into it.
Chapter 8. Opening the velvet drapes to the snow-bright ridges. When the attendant steps back toward the door, the berth remains exactly as he left it, moving only with the train as it carries you deeper into the mountains. He does not leave at once. In the amber compartment light, his polished shoes pause on the carpeted floor, and you hear the faintest change in the corridor air as the door stands not quite closed. It is the kind of pause that comes from long practice, not hesitation. Before the room is fully put away for the night, you want one more look outside. Your eyes go to the alcove where the velvet drapes hang over the window, their folds deep and dark in the lamplight. Earlier, in the dome, the mountains had spread above and around you through curved glass, blue, black and immense, with moonlight gathering on the Bow River far below. Here, the same country now fits the compartment window. It feels different now, not less beautiful, only nearer to hand, reduced to a private measure. The attendant follows your glance and reaches for the drapes. He inclines his head almost imperceptibly, with something that feels less like formality than understanding. His hand moves with the same economy he used at the berth latch and the folded blanket corners. The rings at the top of the curtain rod give a low, sliding murmur as he draws the velvet back. At once, the dark beyond the glass appears, close and cold-looking, yet already softened by the pain between you and the weather. The cold remains outside the glass. The compartment keeps its cedar warmth and steam heat. You feel the difference immediately, not as a draft, but as a contrast on the skin of your face and hands, the way a window carries the memory of winter even when the room around it is warm. For a few breaths you simply look. Black pines pass first, their trunks mostly lost, their upper branches showing as darker strokes against the pale of snow. They rise and fall out of view with the train's motion, close enough that they seem to drift rather than hurry. The snow on them catches what little light there is and gives it back faintly, enough to shape each ridge of bough and each slant of branch before the next stand of trees replaces them. Beyond the pines, the land opens for a moment. A ridge appears, snow bright where the moon reaches it, its line clean and still above the lower dark. You do not try to name the mountain or fix its exact shape. You do not study the ridge. You simply look at it. The train leans through a curve and the view shifts with it. What had been only trees becomes a longer angle of open space, and there, far below,
a ribbon of reflected moonlight appears and slides along the darkness. It is only a narrow silver trace, broken in places by the banks and by the changing angle of the glass, but you know it at once for water. Somewhere down there, the river is still threading through the valley, carrying the moon in fragments. In the dome, it had seemed distant and broad, a silver line beneath the curved roof. Here it returns as that same river made small enough to fit this frame, reduced to a passing strip of brightness no wider than your hand. The evening has been narrowing toward this smaller frame. The rings give another low slide as the train takes a gentler sway. The attendant has not yet drawn the drapes closed. He leaves them open for you without remark, standing back in the practiced way of someone who knows when to be present and when to disappear into the edge of the room, and who knows, too, that this last look matters. You are aware of him only in pieces, the dark line of his sleeve, the polished shine at the toe of one shoe, the stillness that service acquires when it is done well. Outside, the snow continues in that rain-softened way it has had all evening, brushing the carriage and window with a faint, brushed sound that never sharpens into patter. On the glass, the weather blurs the far distance, just enough that the ridges seem to emerge and recede by degrees. A stand of pines thickens, then another opening comes. The moon finds a shoulder of snow. The river returns for 2 heartbeats and is gone again.
You find yourself taking in the scene not with the alertness of arrival, nor with the open curiosity of the dome, but with the slower attention that comes near sleep. Details present themselves and pass. A slope where the snow lies smooth between trees, a cut of darker rock beneath a pale ledge, the black sawtooth edge of conifers against a sky that is not fully black, but deep blue-grey where cloud and moonlight mingle behind the weather. None of it needs arranging in memory. The looking itself is enough, perhaps because you know it cannot go on much longer. The compartment behind you has already taken on the character of the night. The berth is lowered and waiting, its sheets drawn tight, the blanket corners turned back with exactness. The eucalyptus towel rests on the washstand where it was set aside, no longer steaming but still carrying a clean green trace into the cedar polish and heat. Somewhere beyond the door, the sleeper corridor continues in its narrow order, brass hooks moving almost imperceptibly as the train rounds another mountain bend. A wool coat drying near the vestibule, a distant floorboard taking one muted step, and then none. The window reduces the outside world to a few passing details. You can feel that your body responds differently to it here. In the dome, your gaze had lifted and widened. Your shoulders had opened toward the roof glass almost without your noticing. Here, your attention stays close. Your chin lowers a little. Your hands rest where they are. Even the mountains seem to pass at the pace of breathing. Another curve reveals a brighter slope, and for an instant the snow there seems almost luminous. A long, pale plain above the black seam of trees. It recalls the larger, moonlit ridgelines from earlier, but only as an echo, as though the train were offering you one last reduced version before the drapes close. The attendant reaches forward then, not abruptly, only at the natural end of the view, and with the same quiet care with which he had opened it. The curtain rings move once more with their subdued metal whisper. One side of the velvet comes in, and half the window disappears behind its dark nap. The remaining strip of landscape narrows, one final stand of pines, one pale shoulder of snow, a last thin glimmer of water far below. For a moment the scene is framed even more tightly than before, a vertical band of mountain night between 2 folds of velvet. You notice the texture of the drape itself as much as what lies beyond it, the way its heavy pile catches the compartment light and turns it to a muted sheen.
It belongs to railway night in a way broad windows do not. The dome had given you distance. These curtains give you enclosure. The second drape begins to move. The rings slide in sequence, each one taking its turn along the rod. The outside narrows to a handspan, then to a line. In that line, just before it closes, the moon strikes the river once more, and the silver appears and vanishes. Then the drapes meet. The compartment changes at once, though nothing has altered except the view. The amber lamp resumes its full authority. The berth, the washstand, the polished wood trim, the folded towel, the edge of the blanket turned back for you. All of it settles into one enclosed arrangement. The weather remains audible, but now from behind velvet as well as glass, reduced another degree. The mountains continue outside, but they are no longer visible. They have become motion under the wheels and a faint pressure of curve against the carriage. The attendant smooths one side of the drape with the flat of his hand, a final, practical gesture to make sure it hangs properly and will not admit a thread of light from the corridor later on. It is the same kind of finishing motion with which he had smoothed the blanket corners and set the berth in order. You are struck, not for the first time, by how much comfort lies in exactness when it is applied without fuss. He turns back toward you then, and though he says little, the courtesy is complete in the small inclination of his head, gentled by the sense that he has kept faith with the moment. You have seen the ridges once more. You have seen the pines and the river under the moon. That is enough, though not quite without cost.
When he moves to the door, the compartment does not feel emptying so much as settling into the shape prepared for you. The latch gives its restrained click. Beyond it, the corridor remains in its low-lit order, but at a remove now. The polished shoes pass and are gone. The air inside keeps the mingled scents already made familiar over the course of the night. Cedar polish, steam heat, the faint eucalyptus from the towel, and somewhere farther off, only just traceable, black tea and wool drying in the sleeper. You remain where you are for another few breaths, with the closed drapes before you and the made berth beside you. The image of the ridges does not need to be held. It is already softened into the same current that carries the whole evening. White linen under lamplight, the warmth of porcelain in your hands, the tiny crack of settling ice in a crystal glass, the blue reflections of the dome roof, the brass hooks in the corridor, the towel folded once over your hands, the mattress lowered into place. Behind the velvet, black pines and snow-bright slopes continue to slip by. You know they are there without needing to see them again, and not seeing them again has its own ache. The river still takes the moon in fragments somewhere below. The train keeps to its line through the Rockies, and inside the compartment, the world has become small enough to rest in, made gentler by the slight ache of what has just been put away. Chapter 9. Water on the night shelf beside the reading lamp. Behind the velvet drapes, the mountains continue without needing your eyes, and on the little shelf beside the lamp is the final sign that the room is ready for the night. The berth holds its own mix of cedar polish, steam heat, eucalyptus and metal. The lamp beside the berth has been turned down to an amber circle no wider than your handspan, and the shelf under it comes forward out of the dimness with the neatness of something prepared long ago and prepared well. Set into that shelf is the stainless steel carafe, bright in only two places where the lamp catches its shoulder and lid, and beside it the ridged bedside glass, upright in its ring, close enough that you would find it even in the dark. The shelf is neatly arranged: carafe, glass, lamp, switch, a place for the hand to go without searching, a place to set something down without the train taking it away. Now the journey narrows again until it is measured by the reach of your arm. You feel that narrowing not as loss, but as relief, the way a room feels after a door has been closed and latched, and the corridor beyond has gone still.
The attendant is gone, but his work remains. The blanket corners are turned back at the exact angle that lets you slip in without disturbing the rest of the bed. The sheet has that drawn, tight smoothness under the palm that comes only from practiced hands. The ladder has been tucked away. The latch is secure. The drapes are closed. The towel has been folded once and laid squarely on the washstand. Even the lamp has been lowered to this modest glow, enough for the eye to rest on nearby things and no more. You do not need to think ahead to what comes next. It has already been arranged. The train leans into another mountain curve, and the berth answers with its familiar sideward drift. Not enough to shift anything on the shelf, only enough to remind you that all of this order is moving. The ridges of the glass catch a line of light and let it go. The carafe catches less light than the glass. You can imagine its cool weight before your hand reaches for it, the slight give of condensation near the neck where the metal has kept the water colder than the room. For a little while you simply look at it. A cup set where it should be. A lamp that does not glare. A shelf deep enough to trust. When you lift your hand toward the shelf, the motion feels unhurried, as though the train has set the pace for it. Your fingers reach the glass first. The ridges under your fingertips are cool and regular, enough texture to guide your grip without asking for pressure. It is a practical design, meant for use in dim light and in motion, and your hand understands it at once. The glass lifts free with barely a sound. Then your other hand goes to the carafe. Your thumb finds the lid first, and the metal answers with a small, contained note, finer than a click, as if the sound has been softened by the hour. The body of the carafe is colder than the room. You feel that cold gather in the center of your palm, then spread into the pads of your fingers, into the slight tightening of skin that comes with touching metal kept cool while steam heat moves through the compartment. For a moment you hold both things without pouring, simply feeling their different weights. The empty lightness of the glass, the steadier pull of water in the carafe. Outside the window, snow continues to brush the train in that rain-softened way it has had all evening. A hushed grain against the glass, more heard than seen now that the drapes are drawn. The sound folds into the undernote of the rails. Somewhere farther down the car, a fixture gives a faint click as the train settles from one curve to the next. Then all of it blends again. The weather, the wheels, the low vibration in the wall by your shoulder, until the only distinct motion is your own hand tipping the carafe. Water leaves the lip in a narrow, controlled stream. It touches the bottom of the glass with a brief, clear tone, then rises against the ridges, a sound smaller than the car's motion and perfectly matched to it. You pour only a little, enough for a sip, enough to know it is there. The carafe grows lighter by almost nothing at all, yet your hand notices.
You set the carafe back first. Metal meets the shelf with a muted contact, softened by the train's constant tremor. Then you bring the glass toward your mouth. The coolness reaches your lips before the water does. The ridged surface presses lightly against your fingers, and the first sip is colder than the compartment air, colder than the steam heat, colder than the warmth still left in your hands from the towel earlier. It is plain water, and at this hour, plainness feels exact. No citrus from the bar car, no black tea from the corridor, no broth from dinner, just the clean taste of cold water. You swallow and feel the line of coolness pass down through the warmth of your throat and chest. It is a small sensation, but complete enough to pause over, as if this too were part of the room being finished around you. Another sip follows, slower, more deliberate. The train sways under you while the surface of the water shifts in the glass, and you find yourself adjusting without thought.
your wrist moving with the carriage the way one does at sea, or in any place where the floor has its own rhythm. Nothing spills. The motion is already familiar. When the glass lowers again, the compartment seems even smaller in the most useful way. Not cramped, only reduced to what can be reached and known by touch. The blanket edge near your knee, the smooth shelf, the lamp switch, the folded towel on the washstand, the polished wood trim, the seam where mattress meets wall. You could map the whole berth now with one hand and very little effort. Now the geography is measured in inches. You take one more sip and then hold the glass a moment longer near your chin. The lamplight shines through the remaining water and catches in the ridges, making a narrow band of brightness that quivers with the train's movement. That seems right for this part of the night. The mountains are outside, but the room is all you need now. When you return the glass to its place, the base meets the shelf with a thin ring, brief and clean. The sound is so precise that it seems to mark the completion of something. Not an ending, only a settling of one more detail. The glass sits in its holder again, ready and close. The carafe stands beside it, lid aligned, shoulder catching the amber lamp. You know without checking that if you woke in the dark and reached for water, your hand would find it. That is enough. The compartment does not become different so much as finished. The last signs of care are simple. Water, lamp, clear shelf. You are alone in the compartment, but not left to arrange anything. The train continues through the mountains with the same patient side-to-side motion, and your body has begun to accept that motion more fully than before. Seated here at the edge of the berth, you feel it in the soles of your feet where they rest, in the line of your hips against the mattress, in your shoulders loosening each time the car eases from one curve toward the next. The steam heat keeps the compartment even. No drafts reach you behind the drapes. The air has that sleeper car mixture you noticed on first arrival. Cedar polish, warmed fabric, a trace of tea somewhere farther off in memory now. And over it all, the faint, cool note from the water on the shelf. You glance once toward the drapes, though they remain closed. You do not need to look again. The outside world has been acknowledged for the night. What matters now is that the berth is prepared, the water is within reach, and the lamp can be lowered another degree whenever you choose. Your hand moves to the switch and pauses there, not yet turning it, only resting on the warm little knob. The lamp hums almost imperceptibly. Beneath that, the carriage gives its low, continuous vibration through wood, fabric, and mattress frame. You can feel the difference between the fixed things and the moving ones. The shelf remains steady in relation to you, while the train carries both of you forward together. That distinction grows less important the longer you sit with it, so you stay with it a little longer. The metal carafe cooling the air around it by a degree too slight to measure. The ridged glass with a little water left in the bottom. The blanket turned back beside you, white sheet beneath, corners smoothed. The train drawing its long line through snow that sounds almost like rain against the carriage. Everything needed for the hours ahead is already close at hand. The water is within reach. The lamp is within reach. The blanket waits open beside you. Nothing remains now but to lower the light, lie down, and let the moving dark carry you. Chapter 10. Climbing into the berth as the train sways through the curves. Then it is time to get into bed. You turn toward the berth, and the compartment now belongs to the night. The seat no longer matters. The little room now arranges itself around the bed, around the amber reading lamp, around the square of drapes already drawn, around the low, uninterrupted murmur of wheels under snow and mountain. The sheets lie with that unmistakable firmness of fresh linen drawn tight by practiced hands, their surface cool at first touch, not cold, but crisp enough that your fingertips notice the weave before your weight ever reaches it. The attendant stands only a moment longer, just back to leave you room, polished shoes planted with the easy balance of someone long accustomed to mountain curves. Nothing in his manner suggests instruction. He has already done almost everything. The latch is secure, the ladder tucked away, the blanket turned back in a clean fold, the night shelf ordered with the stainless steel carafe and ridged glass beside the lamp. Even the eucalyptus towel on the washstand still gives off a faint, clean heat, though it has begun to cool at the edges. What remains is the last, simplest part, and because everything before it has been so exact. You sit first. The mattress yields less than an ordinary bed at home, being made for compactness and for travel, but it receives your weight with a steadiness that suits the train. Beneath it, the carriage keeps moving in its own measured language, a low vibration through frame and springs, a sideward drift that reaches you not as a jolt, but as a long, shallow arc. You feel it under your hips and along the backs of your thighs where they meet the sheet, and then, after a breath, in the soles of your feet still resting near the floor. The berth does not stand apart from the train. It is part of the same motion, only translated into something smaller and more regular. Your palm smooths once over the linen beside you. There is pleasure in that plain contact, in finding the sheet stretched so evenly that your hand meets no crease. Dinner comes back for a moment through touch alone. The white Irish linen on the dining car table, flatter and heavier under your wrist. The warmth of the ivory soup bowl cupped in both hands while snow threaded past the dark glass. Then the leather in the bar car, the cut crystal lowball with its tiny settling crack of ice, the dome roof with its blue reflections, and the Bow River far below catching moonlight in a narrow silver line. Now it comes down to the bed under your hand. This bed made ready while the same train carries all those rooms behind you through the same dark country. The attendant lifts the blanket a little higher, one hand at each side, and the fabric opens in a broad curve. It is a familiar railway blanket in weight and finish, substantial without heaviness, warm from the compartment air and from having been folded back near the lamp. You lean, remove your shoes, and place your feet onto the sheet. The first touch is cooler than the air above it. Then the warmth begins at once, your own heat returning through the cotton. One foot, then the other, slides forward. The linen gives a faint, dry sound beneath your heels, and the mattress shifts by scarcely more than a breath. For a moment you remain half in, half out, seated at the edge with your feet already under the turned-back blanket, your body still upright in the old posture of the day. Then you give the berth the rest of your weight. When you lie down, you feel the care that went into the bed. The train finds you again in new places. The back of your shoulders meets the bed. The small of your back settles. Your calves lengthen out. The pillow, turned down and waiting at the head of the berth, receives the weight of your head with a denser softness than the mattress below. For an instant you notice each point separately. Shoulder blades, hips, heels, the line of your neck against the case. Then the distinctions begin to merge, and the berth takes over the work of supporting what you no longer need to hold upright. The blanket comes across you.
It passes first over your shins, then your knees, then your thighs, and with each inch the compartment fills warmer. Not because the air changes, but because the open space above your body narrows. By the time the blanket reaches your waist, the cool trace left by the sheet has already softened. It rises over your middle and chest, and finally the attendant draws it to your shoulders with that same economy he used for the latch, the frame, the drapes, the lamp. The edge reaches settles just below it. For a beat he holds it there, and you feel the warmth gather under it before the weight fully comes to rest. Its pressure is immediate but not pressing, enough to register only along you at once, enough to close the air around you into something held and sheltered. Then he tucks in the blanket. With the back of one hand he tests the line of the blanket near your side, and with the other he tucks it in along the mattress. Not tightly enough to pin you, only enough to keep out the cooler air that gathers near the window in the outer wall. The train leans as he works, and his balance shifts with it so naturally that the motion of the carriage seems built into the movement of his arms. One side, then the other. A practice sweep under the edge, a smoothing pass along the top. You feel the blanket draw closer along your ribs and hips, then along your legs, and the warmth closes around you by degrees, each tuck making the berth more definite, more private, until it is less like a bed placed in a room than a narrow, padded alcove, shaped exactly to one sleeping passenger. It is an odd comfort, being tucked in by someone who knows how. The attendant reaches past, not over you exactly, but near enough that you catch the clean scent of pressed cloth and cedar polish from his sleeve as he lowers the lamp another degree. The amber light remains, though dim now, enough to keep the berth from going dark all at once. It leaves a narrow shine on the stainless steel carafe and turns the ridges of the bedside glass into small vertical bands. Beyond that, the compartment recedes. The washstand with the folded towel, the compartment door, the brass hook out in the corridor where your coat had hung earlier. These become part of the room's outline, rather than its focus. A final smoothing at your shoulder, a brief look to make sure the blanket sits evenly. Then the attendant steps back. His shoes make almost no sound on the floor, only the faintest contact, quickly absorbed by the compartment and by the train's own undernote. There may be a nod, or only the sense of wanting a pause before he turns. The door eases, not fully shut if it was left on the catch for air, but set as it should be for the hour. The small change in the room's acoustics tells you more than sight would. The corridor is now farther away, reduced to a softened layer beyond wood and curtain and berth frame. The attendant is gone now. After he is gone, you do not move at once. The bed has been made so exactly that even a small shift becomes noticeable in a pleasing way. You let one shoulder settle deeper. You lengthen one leg by an inch and feel the sheet answer with its smooth resistance. Your heel finds a cooler patch near the lower end of the berth and warms it. The pillow receives a little more of your head as your jaw unclenches. The side-to-side motion under the mattress continues, regular but never mechanical, because each curve of track writes it slightly differently. Sometimes a movement is broad enough to carry your weight from one hip to the other. Sometimes it is no more than a suggestion under your lower back, as if the berth itself had exhaled. Outside, the snow against the carriage has that rain-softened sound. It is kept all evening. A brushed hush at the window, rather than any sharp tapping. You hear it now only as part of the larger pattern. Weather at the glass, wheels below, a muted join between cars when the train enters a different alignment of track. Then the long, even run again. In the dome, those sounds had belonged to distance and view. In the corridor, they had followed your steps. Here they arrive through mattress and pillow and blanket. translated into something the body can follow without effort. You think, perhaps, of how the night has narrowed by degrees, without ever feeling closed in. First the corridor at dusk, with brass hooks and drying wool and steam heat. Then the dining car, and a white linen and silver. Then the leather chair in the bar car, your hand near the crystal glass while the ice settled in time with the sway. Then the dome, with moonlit ridges and black pines and the river far below. Then back again, through the runner carpet and cedar warmth to the compartment, the eucalyptus towel folded over your hands, the berth lowered, the drapes opened once and drawn. Your breathing begins to follow the train, not consciously at first. It simply shortens and lengthens by a fraction to meet the motion. On one curve, your chest rises as the carriage leans. On the next, your exhale seems to travel a little farther down through your ribs and belly before it leaves you. The blanket keeps a stable pressure over that movement, enough for you to feel the breath with more clarity than before. Under the tucked sides, your knees loosen. Your ankles fall outward by a degree. The muscles at the back of your neck stop measuring the pillow and begin to use it. If you lift your hand, the night shelf is there exactly where it was before. The ridged glass cool under your fingers, the carafe solid in its place. But you do not need to reach for either one yet. It is enough to know their distance. The lamp remains low and amber. The drapes stay closed. Behind them, the pines and ridges continue to pass, but they no longer need your eyes. Another curve comes through the train, broad and patient. The berth inclines almost imperceptibly, then rights itself. The tucked blanket shifts against your shoulder by the width of a seam. Somewhere farther down the sleeper, a door closes with the smallest padded click. And after that, the car returns to its layered hush. Steam heat moves through hidden pipes with a faint metallic undercurrent. Cedar polish still lives in the wood near your head. A trace of eucalyptus remains on your hands when they pass near your face, cleaner now and cooler than before. You settle a little further. The sheet beneath your calves is no longer cool. The pillow has shaped itself more fully beneath your ear. The blanket along both sides now feels natural. The train keeps carrying you through the mountain dark whether you attend to it or not, and the berth translates that journey into pressure, warmth, and sway. So you lie there, while the rails continue under you in their measured sequence, while the weather brushes the window, while the lamp keeps its low amber circle over the carafe and glass. The blanket rests over your shoulders and rises and falls with your breath. Chapter 11. Listening to rain-softened snow at the window in the dark. After a while, you stop looking at the lamp. Its glow remains where it is, a low point near the shelf, but your attention loosens from it and turns instead toward what reaches you through the darkened compartment. The brushed sound at the window, the faint tremor moving through wood, frame, mattress and pillow, the undernote of wheels on rail. Outside, the snow has the same softened texture it had earlier against the corridor windows, but here, in the berth alcove, behind the drawn velvet drapes and with your cheek nearer the pillow than the pane, it comes to you as a thin, rain-like hush. You hear it in strokes rather than taps. A little moisture gathers and travels somewhere beyond the glass, not in a line you need to picture exactly, only in a slow brushing sound, light and continuous for a few breaths, then thinner again. Snow and meltwater make no sharp distinction at this hour. You hear the cold only as sound, a sifted contact along the window and the carriage side, softened by upholstery, curtain, timber, and the layered warmth of the sleeper.
The whole Rockies have narrowed to one panel of hidden glass and the small weather crossing it. The pillow has cooled where your cheek first touched it, and warmed where your breath turns back toward you. Beneath your shoulder, the sheet remains smooth and taut, with only the slightest give where the mattress yields to your weight. The attendant's work still shows in everything your hand can reach without looking. The blanket tucked along both sides, the edge folded back near your chest, the shelf arranged with the carafe and ridged glass exactly where they were left, the reading lamp low and unwavering despite the mounting curves. Nothing in the compartment needs adjusting. Even that thought fades quickly because there is no need to keep checking. Under that, the rails continue, not loudly. The train has long since settled into its night manner, and the clatter has become subdued, more felt than heard at times, as if the sound has sunk into the berth itself. There is the repeating contact of wheel and joint, then the long run between, then another muted sequence, each one rounded by distance and by the padded interior of the car. It reaches your back through the mattress in a low vibration, and your ear through the pillow in a softened pattern. You stop counting and let it pass. You find yourself choosing the second without effort. The car moves through one longer bend, and the berth tilts by degrees. First comes the suggestion of it in your ribs and shoulder, a patient sideward drift. Then the answering return as the train eases out again. The brass coat hook in the corridor would be shifting almost imperceptibly now, and the runner carpet beyond the compartment door would be taking the footfall of no one at all. Earlier in the evening you noticed those things as part of your arrival, then again on your way back from the dome. The corridor still carrying traces of black tea and wool coats drying near the vestibule. Now the corridor is only a narrow length of car beyond the wall, warm with steam heat and cedar polish, settled into the same motion as your berth. Somewhere far down that unseen length, a last footstep passes over carpet. It is so subdued that at first it could be part of the train itself. A slight change in pressure, a muffled sequence, then another. But the rhythm is human for a moment, heel and sole moderated by the runner, moving with care so as not to disturb sleepers who may already be farther gone than you are. It travels only a short distance before it fades into the car's general murmur. No door closes sharply after it. No voice follows. The sound simply diminishes until the rails absorb it. After that, the car grows quieter. You listen to the space the footstep leaves behind. It is not emptiness. The weather comes forward first. Thin, wet strokes along the hidden pane. A brief trailing as meltwater slips, then a lighter brushing again. The cold beyond the glass is legible only by what holds it off. The steam heat in the walls, the blanket close at your shoulders, the tucked edge keeping warmth along your ribs. Then the rails return more clearly. Far beneath the berth, wheel and rail keep their steady pattern. Muted contact, glide, muted contact. The sequence reaches you through the mattress and through the pillow at once. One path to your back, another to your ear. It is steadier now that no human sound interrupts it. You do not count. You let the pattern pass through you until it feels less like separate impacts than like a low current, carrying the compartment onward through grade and distance. Above and around that, the wind finds the carriage side. It is lighter than the rail sound, and higher than the weather at the pane, more like a narrow thread drawn along metal. At times it strengthens for a breath or two when the train comes around an exposed curve, then falls away again once the car has turned or the line has dipped between trees. You hear the difference when the train passes through trees. Your hand shifts once beneath the blanket. The sheet is cool where your fingers travel, warmer where your palm comes to rest against your own side. The blanket has a settled weight to it now, no longer newly laid over you, but shaped by the length of your body. by your shoulders, your knees, the line of your feet. With each mounting curve, that weight changes by almost nothing, only enough for you to feel that the train is still moving through real country beyond the Drapes. It is a useful kind of motion, one that takes over the work of rocking thought loose from its edges. Then breath comes nearest. Your breathing has been there all along, but now you hear it in the small, warm space the blanket makes before your mouth. Feel it turn back against your chin. Feel the pillow answer faintly each time your head settles a fraction deeper. For a few moments it falls into step with the rails, then drifts free again. You do not need to make that happen. It comes and goes on its own. Breath, rail, sway, the slight pressure of pillow against cheek, weather again at the pain. You can still remember the evening, but only by texture now. The white Irish linen in the dining car returns as the memory of cloth under your wrist and the warmth of the ivory soup bowl in your hands. The bar car comes back as leather receiving your weight and the tiny shifting crack of ice in the cut crystal lowball when the carriage swayed. The observation dome survives as cool glass above, and moonlight caught far below on the Bow River before black pines gathered in again. The lamp remains on, though you are no longer attending to it. Its amber circle reaches the steel carafe and catches one ridge of the bedside glass, enough to make a dim line there if you were to open your eyes fully. But your eyelids have grown less interested in that small arrangement. The shelf is where it should be. The glass is there if you want it. The towel on the washstand has long since cooled. The polished wood of the compartment has given back its cedar scent in the heat. Nothing calls for your hand. The weather at the window thickens for a little while. Not louder exactly, but more continuous, as if the snow outside has turned wetter for this stretch of track, or as if the angle of the car to the falling weather has changed. The sound resembles rain more than snow now, a fine brushing and trailing over glass and painted metal, yet the cold beyond it remains unmistakable in the way the blanket at your shoulders matters, in the way the tucked sides keep a narrow seam of warmth along your ribs and hips. You feel the mountain night not by direct contact, but by the care taken against it. The steam heat in the walls, the close berth, the turned back edge under your chin. Then the weather thins again, and the rails become clearer. A sequence passes beneath you, muted contact, glide, muted contact, and your breathing falls into step with it for a few moments before drifting free. The order changes subtly each time your attention circles through it. Sometimes the vibration under the mattress is nearest. Sometimes the brushed moisture at the window comes forward. Sometimes what you notice most is the shape your own body has made in the berth, the way your shoulders have dropped farther into the pillow than they were when you first lay down. Beyond the compartment wall, the rest of the sleeper has faded from attention. A distant door might have been eased into its frame some time ago, or perhaps that belongs to memory from the corridor. The polished shoes and soft knock of the attendant are no longer part of the active night, only part of how the night was arranged. The wool coats by the vestibule, the brass hooks, the runner carpet, the dining room silver, the leather chairs, the dome glass, all remain somewhere behind and around you in the train's long body, but they have receded. What remains present is simpler. Weather, rail, wind, warmth, breath. Another broad curve takes the train, and you feel it first in the mattress, then in the blanket's slight draw across your shoulder, then in the delayed answer of the pillow as your head settles a fraction deeper. The motion is side to side rather than up and down, a shallow marine swing translated into steel and timber. It is enough to remind you that the Rockies are still outside, dark and snow-marked, ridges passing beyond the Drapes whether you look for them or not. Yet even that thought does not open outward very far. It folds back almost at once into the berth and the weather at the hidden glass. You listen, and then listening itself becomes less exact. The weather turns to a light brushing and then to almost nothing, then returns. The rails soften into a continuous undernote with only occasional points of contact rising through it. The wind at the carriage side appears as a fine thread and disappears again. Your breath moves in the blanket. The shelf keeps its carafe and glass. The lamp keeps its low amber circle. The tucked edges of the bedding stay close along your sides, and the steam heat in the car holds steady against the cold beyond the wall. The sound at the window, the motion under the mattress, and your own breathing settle into one rhythm.
Chapter 12. Falling asleep in the sleeper berth while the Rockies drift by. In that reduced world, the rhythm goes on, and after a time you stop placing each sound where it comes from. Moisture at the hidden window, the rail joints under the car, the low current of heat along the wall, the minute tremor in the berth frame. All of it begins to blend, not into sameness, but into a pattern broad enough to rest inside. You lie where everything was left in exact order. The sheet is still crisp under your hands when you shift them, cool at first and then warmer where your palms remain. The blanket has weight without heaviness. It lies across your shoulders, along your ribs, over your hips and thighs, and down to your feet in one even plane, tucked along both sides so that when the train leans you feel the berth move beneath you before you feel any draft at all. The pillow keeps a trace of coolness on the turned side, and when you settle your cheek more deeply into it, the cotton gives with a faint dry sound nearly lost in the rails. The lamp beside the night shelf has been lowered enough that its amber circle reaches only the carafe, the ridged glass, the edge of the folded drape, and the nearest seam of blanket. Beyond that, the compartment recedes into dark wood and shadow. The latch is secure, the ladder is tucked away. The berth is now simply a bed. It is enough to be lying in it. A mountain curve passes through the car with a longer, slower sweep than the ones before. You feel it first under the mattress, a sideward drift that reaches your shoulder and hip together, then steadies again. Your breathing changes with it. The inhale comes as the berth rises almost imperceptibly under you, the exhale as it eases back. Nothing is exact enough to count. The train does not repeat itself like a clock. It sways, corrects, glides, and carries on, and your breath begins to take its measure from that broader motion. The weather at the window keeps its rain-softened sound. Snow still lies out there on the ridges and among the black pines, but against the carriage it comes through as a brushed hush, with threads of meltwater finding their way along the glass. You cannot see it through the drawn velvet drapes. Even with the drapes drawn, you remain aware of the cold outside. The carafe stands where it was left, stainless steel catching a dim line from the lamp. If you were to reach for it, your fingers would meet the cool curve of metal first, then the ridges of the glass beside it. But you do not need to move. The knowledge that the water is there is enough. The shelf is within easy reach. The lamp switch is close by. The drapes are drawn. The compartment has been reduced to what can be touched without sitting up. Another long section of track carries the train more evenly, and in that steadier run the vibration under the mattress becomes easier to notice. It is not a shake, not even a tremble exactly, but a continuous fine movement as the rails pass their vibration through frame, bedding, and body. It reaches the back of your head through the pillow, the length of your spine where it rests, the softened backs of your knees, your heels under the blanket. You feel less the surface beneath you than the fact of being borne along by it. Somewhere farther down the sleeper, a door settles into its latch with a muted click. Then nothing follows. No footstep, no voice.
The sound is so slight that it does not disturb the pattern already formed around you. It only confirms that the rest of the car has gone on dimming in the same gradual way. Steam heat continues its low work. Cedar polish remains in the woodwork, milder now, and beneath it the faintest trace of tea and wool. You shift one shoulder a fraction deeper into the pillow. The blanket draws with you because of the careful tucking along the sides, and then settles again, close across your chest and upper arms. The sensation is familiar now. The berth is narrow enough that you are aware of its edges without touching them. The drapes make a small alcove around the bed. The lamp keeps its low amber pool. Beyond that, the train and the mountains continue in darkness, whether you attend to them or not.
Your breathing and the carriage sway come nearer to one another with each passing minute. Not matched exactly, but companionable. A longer exhale seems to widen the mattress beneath you. A slower inhale seems to meet the rise at the curve under the rails. The chest loosens first, then the belly, then the thighs. Even the hands resting lightly curled against the sheet or blanket begin to lie flatter, fingers less inclined to hold. The river flashes once in memory and is gone. The weather remains steady. A little more moisture brushes the window, then less. The rails murmur under the car in alternating textures. Now a smoother run. Now the more articulated passage over joints and points. Each change rounded by distance and bedding and wood. You hear them through layers, through the drapes, through the wall, through the berth frame, through the pillow. Sound reaches you softened by distance and bedding. If you notice the cool side of the pillow and turn your face toward it, that coolness lasts only a moment before it fades. If you draw one foot a little further down under the blanket, the sheet there is still fresh and smooth. If your shoulder eases back and your neck lengthens into the pillow, the mattress answers with that same fine, rail-borne vibration. Unchanged, dependable, unhurried. Small adjustments are still possible, but they become fewer. The body finds what it was looking for and begins to remain there. Another curve, another long easing back. The berth moves under you with a nearly tidal patience, side to side, then level, then side to side again. The motion does not insist on being followed. It is enough to feel it once, then let it pass through. Your breathing answers in the same way. In, out. A pulse so slight it is hardly a pulse. In again. The lamp still burns on its low setting beside the carafe and glass, though your attention no longer rests there for long. The amber edge of it touches the blanket fold near your hand and the lower pleat of the drape. The rest is darkened wood, warmed metal, cloth, and the hidden window where the weather continues its brushed passage. Beyond the glass are ridges gone pale with snow, pines standing black against them, and the river taking moonlight where the valley opens. But these are only faint knowings now, not scenes to be held in view. The train keeps its line through the mountains. The berth keeps its shape around you. The pillow cools and warms by turns. The blanket lies steadily from shoulder to feet. Beneath everything, the rails continue their measured undernote. The rhythm comes and goes while the train keeps moving through the dark.